What's up everybody, how's it going? In this video, I want to give you 4 tips on how to run a side business while having a full-time job, especially if you're hoping to turn that side business into a full-time business, into your full-time job. Now, I think that I'm pretty well equipped to talk about this subject because, as a lot of you know, the company that I currently run, AlgoExpert, which is a pretty successful business by all accounts and measures, started out as a side business. During the first 2.5 years of AlgoExpert's existence, my co-founder and I had full-time jobs as software engineers. So with that, let's dive into the 4 tips. But the first quick thing that I have to say is, of course, if you're a software engineer preparing for your technical interviews, then do check out my company AlgoExpert. Go to algoexpert.io and use the promo code CLEM, C-L-E-M, for a discount on the platform. Okay, so the first tip that I have for you is to entirely 100% separate your side business life from your full-time job life. Now, what I mean by this is when you are at your full-time job, when you are at work, your day job most likely, you do not want to be thinking at all or, of course, working on your side business. And conversely, when you're at home working on your side business, you don't want to be thinking or working on your full-time job. Now, this is important for 2 reasons. First of all, there's a bit of a legal reason, which is actually very important. Most companies these days don't actually allow you to be working on something while you're at work. And that means both, doing things like, emails or things like that, or working on their actual property, like the laptops that they give you or the phones that they give you. Otherwise, they can claim your intellectual property as theirs because you did it while on the job. So you definitely want to avoid that. But then on top of that, there's also an emotional or mental reason to do this. And it's that if you're at work and you are constantly thinking about your side business, you're just going to make yourself miserable. You're going to hate being at work. You're going to feel like you're wasting your time there. And it might just be an indication that it's time to take the leap and make that side business become your full-time gig. Remember that the whole reason for which to have a side business in the first place is to continue to have the luxury of a full-time job that can give you good career growth, good financial stability, and so it's important that you still nurture that job. That's why when I was at Google, I was really excited about working hard, getting promoted, which I did. Then I changed jobs to Facebook to get a big pay raise, so I was still focusing on that part of my life. Now, my second tip is that even though this is going to be a side business, you have to treat it as a full-time job. Basically, you are not going to have a side business and a full-time job. You are going to have two full-time jobs. This is really important. What it really comes down to is you're going to have to work your ass off. It's going to be really hard, really tiring, really exhausting. You're going to have to make a lot of sacrifices, but that is super important. Remember, the point of a side business is so that you have the luxury of a full-time job that gives you a safety net. It is not to make it easier. In fact, this is going to be probably harder than just running the side business full-time without a full-time job because you're going to be working basically twice as much. You cannot afford to just work on your side business for a couple hours a week. You're not going to be able to grow that side business into something that can turn into a full-time business if you're only putting 2 hours a week on it. This is not going to work out. To give you the example for me, I was putting basically all of my mornings into AlgoExpert during my train rides from home to work, then all of my evenings and even into the nights. As soon as I got home, boom, into AlgoExpert. I would only make room for the gym or for eating, but even when I was eating, I was usually working on AlgoExpert. And then the weekends, I was also working on AlgoExpert. And this might be really difficult because you're going to see all of your coworkers or friends who don't do that, who have lives outside of their full-time jobs, and you might be tempted. But again, if you want this hard enough, and of course, this depends on your motivations. You have to really ask yourself if you want to do this. But if you really want it, you're going to have to make that sacrifice. I really firmly believe this, and this is something that maybe I'll make a video about in the near future if you're interested. But there are a lot of things about the early days of AlgoExpert that I haven't really shared with anyone, but it really wasn't easy. Like, it was grueling. But if my co-founder and I hadn't put that insane amount of work into the business back then, it likely wouldn't have turned into the company that it is today. So I'm certainly not just, blindly telling you work hard for no reason at all. I think this is super important. The third tip that I have for you is to be really careful not to give up too soon. Now, I'll share a personal story about Algo Expert in a second, but what I mean by that is, like I said in the previous tip, you're going to have to work really hard and it's going to be really tiring. And there will be times where you're going to want to quit. The reason you're going to want to quit is because you're going to be putting in so much effort and it's going to be so difficult, and yet you're not really going to get much in return. Because as anybody who's created a company and grown it into something big will tell you, during the early days of the company's growth, there will be a lot of time where you don't have any growth. You are putting in tons of effort, you are growing the product, or building the product rather, but you're not really getting many customers. You're maybe getting a few customers, a little bit of revenue, but not that much. And that period of time, when you're past the sort of initial excitement of just launching your company or launching your product and getting your first couple of customers, you're past that exciting phase, the honeymoon phase of the business, but you are before the true growth phase where the business is starting to grow like parabolically and you're getting customers every single day and hundreds of them, thousands of them. In that in-between phase where you're putting in so much effort but not really getting anything in return, and especially if this is a side business and you have a full-time job and you're seeing all your coworkers enjoying life, especially for me when I was a software engineer at Facebook, you see all your coworkers who are pretty well off, right? Because you're getting paid a lot as a software engineer, and you're kind of like, well, I don't have the same life that they do. Every night when I come home, I have to work on, algorithm problems in my case, or whatever your business is. That can be really grueling, but you cannot give up because the whole point of the side business is to get to a point where you can either validate the business as something that you can actually take a leap on, or invalidate it and really confirm that it is not a good idea, not a sustainable business. But there will be a period of time when you have neither validated the business nor invalidated it. And so this is where I want to share this personal anecdote from us. When we were, I would say, between the 1 and 2 year mark of working on Algo Expert, I don't remember exactly, but we were getting to that point where we were really discouraged. We had very few customers, but the few customers that we did have were really, giving us positive feedback about the company and the product. They were like, I love this, I want more content, blah, blah. But we didn't have that many customers, not much growth, and we were kind of like, getting burnt out. And so we actually tried to sell Algo Expert. We were kind of in talks with Full Stack Academy, the bootcamp that I actually attended, and with whom we have a partnership where we sell them licenses of Algo Expert for their students. And we actually tried to sell Algo Expert. In our heads, we were like, if we could sell this for anywhere between $200,000 and $400,000, to get at least like 1 year's worth of software engineering salary for both me and my co-founder, maybe we'd be happy and we can kind of do something else or just focus full-time on our full-time jobs. And I'm really happy that this just ended up never happening. And in fact, the founder of Full Stack, with whom I was having a lot of talks, told me, he was like, why do you guys want to sell this business so quickly? Like, you have a potentially really good business that could have really high growth. You have to give it a bit more time and just keep working on it. At the very least, it's a good lifestyle side business, permanently. But so basically, yeah, we just didn't sell it to them because they were really uninterested. And in hindsight, I'm just really happy because it turned out that we hadn't given it enough time to prove itself that it could be a full-time business, but it clearly wasn't a bad business, right? And we just needed to give it a bit more time. So the point is, do not give up too early. My fourth and final tip is to know when to actually take the leap and quit your full-time job to pursue that side business full-time. This is probably the thing that I'm asked about the most on LinkedIn, on Twitter. People always ask me, how did you know when you were at Facebook that it was time for you to quit your full-time job and pursue Algo Expert full-time? And I've really nailed it down to 3 things. Mentally, something that has to do with your mental state of mind, the revenue of the business, and the roadmap of the business. So mentally, what I mean is, if you're at a point where at work, you are absolutely unable to avoid thinking about your side business, which is what I told you to do in tip number 1, if you're at that point, then it might be time to take the leap. I remember during the 2 months that I was at Facebook, the short 2 months, I could not stop thinking about AlgoExpert. Every day I would go to work and that's all I could think about because one, I was really excited about it. Things were looking very promising, but there was also like a ton of work to do. And so I kept thinking about things and I was like, oh, like I'm at work here. I have to focus on work. And I liked the job at Facebook, but it was like, kept thinking about AlgoExpert. And so it really, and this was the same thing for my co-founder and the two other people who were going to join us full time. One of them already had joined us for the previous year. But yeah, we were all in the same sort of mental space, and it was just time to take the leap. Now, the second thing is revenue. If the revenue of the business is at a point where it can, at the very least, just sustain you, but ideally comfortably sustain you, then it's likely time to take the leap. So this is going to vary from person to person based on your jobs, and this is where it was a bit tricky for us because we were software engineers at big tech companies, so we had pretty high-paying jobs, but you have to be careful not to be golden handcuffed to those jobs, to those huge, salaries, and realize that, yeah, hey, you might have to take a pay cut temporarily, but, if you can be sustained by the business, that should still be okay. So, for example, for us, I think that the months leading to when we quit our full-time jobs, AlgoExpert had made like $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 during the 3 months before, $50K, $60K, $70K. And so back then for us, that was like a lot of money for a business. That was the first time we had broken these levels of monthly revenue. And we were thinking in our minds, like, if we could make, let's say, 80K, which we were very close to, sustained throughout the entire year, monthly 80K with no growth, that would be about $1 million. That would be like a pretty good small business. And admittedly, I had to leave a lot of money on the table at Facebook. I left, $350,000 compensation package for my first year at Facebook, but it was still worth it. Like, that revenue was there. It was much higher than, let's say, the previous year when we were barely making, $2,000 a month. And then finally, the third thing is the roadmap of the company. If you're at a point where you've got tons of things that you have to work on for the company, and you know that you don't have time to work on them, or if you didn't have a full-time job, you could work on them much faster, then it might be time to take the leap. As an example, for us, a year before, we didn't have that much insane amount of work to do on AlgoExpert. We had a lot of stuff, but at our core, we were a small coding interview prep platform. We had something like 40 or 50 questions back then. We only had AlgoExpert, our coding interview prep offering. We didn't have things like mock interviews or assessments on the platform. We didn't even have our data structures crash course. And so there wasn't that much to do. But then by the time that we took the leap, we had tons of things to do. We had tons of customer service to cater to. We had a lot of like marketing things that we had to do, create video ads. We had to add a ton of content. We had systems expert, our systems design offering that we wanted to work on. There were so many different things, and it became overwhelmingly clear that we weren't going to be able to actually give these things the attention that they needed or the effort that they needed if we had our full-time jobs. And so that gave us the final push to take the leap. And yeah, that's really important because if you never take the leap, then that side business will forever be a side business, and you don't want that. Assuming that that's your goal, obviously, to make it a full-time business. So those were my 4 tips. I hope that you found them informative, insightful. If you did, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to smash the like button. It really helps me out. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter if you enjoy short-form written content. Instagram if you like pictures, and otherwise I will see you in the next video.